Have you ever wondered if the smallest things you do each day truly matter to God? Have you ever felt that your life is too ordinary, too simple, too unnoticed to really please Him? And have you ever suspected, deep in your heart, that God might be more moved by love than by greatness? There is a gentle truth that Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus lived and taught with her entire soul. God is not impressed by size, visibility, or achievement. He is touched by love, especially when that love hides itself in small, ordinary acts. What pleases God most is rarely what draws attention. It is what is done quietly, lovingly, and without being seen. Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus, Saint Thérèse of Lisieux. Subscribe if you wish to walk this little way and discover how small acts can become great in God's eyes. The title of this journey reveals something deeply countercultural to the human heart. 7 small acts can please God more than you think, not because they are impressive, but because they are sincere. Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus believed that holiness was not reserved for extraordinary souls, but for those willing to love in the smallest possible ways. She wrote, "To pick up a pin for love can convert a soul." This single sentence summarizes her entire spirituality. For her, God was not watching from a distance, measuring results. He was bending close, watching intentions. He was looking not at what was done, but why it was done. A small act, when done with pure love, became immense in heaven. Imagine a quiet moment in her convent life. A corridor swept slowly, a plate washed carefully, a smile offered when tired, a word withheld when irritation rose. These were not heroic gestures. No one applauded them. No one noticed them. Yet Santa Teresinha believed they delighted God deeply, because love was hidden inside them. This is the heart of the little way, doing small things with great love. Many souls believe they must do something remarkable to please God, something visible, something sacrificial, something dramatic. But Santa Teresinha gently dismantles this illusion. She teaches that God prefers a heart that loves quietly to a life that shines loudly. Think of a child offering a simple drawing to a parent. The paper is crooked, the colors spill outside the lines. Yet the parent treasures it, not because it is perfect, but because it is given with love. This is how God receives your smallest acts. In this series, we will walk through 7 small acts that Santa Teresinha believed delighted God deeply. Acts available to everyone, in every state of life, in every ordinary day. They do not require talent. They do not require recognition. They require only intention, humility, and love. Before we begin naming these acts, pause for a moment. Look at your own daily life, the unnoticed moments, the repetitive tasks, the quiet choices no one sees. According to Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus, this is precisely where holiness is hidden. Before Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus ever spoke about great love, she spoke about small acceptance. And this leads us to the first small act that pleases God more than we imagine, an act so quiet that it often goes unnoticed even by the one who practices it. The first small act is this: accepting daily inconveniences without bitterness, not with silence that hardens the heart, not with resignation that feels heavy, but with a gentle interior yes that transforms irritation into offering. Santa Teresinha believed that most souls lose peace not through great trials, but through small resistances. The little moments where the heart tightens, complains inwardly, or demands that life be different than it is. She discovered that God is deeply pleased when a soul chooses love precisely at those moments. She wrote, "I have resolved to bear everything with joy." This joy was not emotional excitement. It was an interior choice, a softness of heart. Picture a simple scene from her daily life. A sister speaks abruptly. A task is changed without explanation. A routine is interrupted. None of these are dramatic, yet each one touches the heart. In these moments, Santa Teresinha felt the same natural reactions we all feel: irritation, disappointment, fatigue. But instead of feeding them, she gently offered them to God. This is where the small act lives. Accepting an inconvenience without bitterness does not mean pretending it does not hurt. It means choosing not to let the hurt close the heart. It means saying quietly and sincerely, "Jesus, I accept this for love of you." This single interior sentence transforms everything. What appears insignificant on the outside becomes precious on the inside. God sees not the inconvenience itself, but the love that accepts it. Santa Teresinha believed that these moments are spiritual gold because they are pure, hidden, and free from human praise. Think about your own day. The unexpected delay, the unanswered message, the interruption when you are tired, the small disappointment you did not choose. According to Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus, these moments are invitations, not to endurance alone, but to love. She insisted that holiness does not consist in avoiding irritation, but in responding to it with gentleness. Each time you accept a small inconvenience without bitterness, your heart becomes more flexible, more peaceful, more open to grace. And God delights in that openness. Why does this small act please God so deeply? Because it imitates His patience, because it reflects trust, because it shows love without conditions. Anyone can accept life when it flows smoothly, but when the soul accepts the small crosses of daily life with humility, it tells God, I trust you even here. This act is invisible to others. No one applauds it. No one notices it. And that is precisely why it is so pleasing to God. The second small act that pleases God more than we imagine takes place not in silence, but in relationship. Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus discovered that love becomes most real when it is tested by people, especially those who are difficult, inconvenient, or misunderstood. The second small act is this: responding with kindness when it would be easier to withdraw. Not dramatic kindness, not visible generosity, but quiet, deliberate gentleness offered when the heart wants to close. Santa Teresinha lived in community, and she was very honest about the challenges this brought. She admitted that some personalities irritated her deeply, some habits were hard to endure, some interactions wounded her pride, yet she made a radical choice. She would never allow her heart to retreat into coldness. She wrote, I resolved never to let my words or actions reveal the feelings of irritation I experienced. This was not repression, it was transformation. Imagine a simple scene from convent life. A sister repeats the same habit that has always been difficult. Santa Teresinha feels the familiar tightening inside, the desire to distance herself emotionally, to remain polite but cold, to protect her heart. And right there in that interior moment the small act appears. Instead of retreating, she leans forward in love. A gentle word, a patient tone, a sincere smile, an attentive presence. No one sees the battle inside her heart. But God sees everything. This small act pleases God deeply because it mirrors His own love. God does not withdraw from us when we are difficult. He does not become cold when we repeat the same weaknesses. He remains near, gentle, patient. And when we choose to love others in this same way, even quietly, we reflect His heart. Santa Teresinha believed that love is proven not when it is easy, but when it costs something interiorly. And responding with kindness when it would be easier to withdraw costs pride, comfort, and self-protection. Think about your own relationships. Is there someone you keep at a distance, not outwardly but inwardly? Someone you tolerate, but no longer truly love? Someone you interact with politely but without warmth? According to Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus, these are sacred spaces for holiness. She did not seek out extraordinary opportunities to love. She allowed love to meet her exactly where she was, in the ordinary, repetitive, sometimes uncomfortable interactions of daily life. And God was deeply pleased by this hidden faithfulness. Why does this small act matter so much? Because it is pure. Because it expects nothing in return. Because it is done for God alone. Anyone can be kind when it feels natural. But choosing kindness when the heart wants to close is an act of love that heaven notices immediately. This act slowly softens the soul. It frees the heart from bitterness. It restores peace without noise. And over time it forms a heart that loves as God loves, quietly, faithfully, without condition. The third small act that pleases God more than we imagine happens entirely inside the heart, where no one sees it, where no applause reaches, and where only God listens. Santa Teresinha, Menino Jesus believed that this hidden interior act was one of the most precious gifts a soul could offer. The third small act is this: choosing humility in unnoticed moments. Not public humility, not visible self-denial, but the quiet decision to accept being small, forgotten, misunderstood, or unrecognized without defending yourself. Santa Teresinha understood that pride often disguises itself as dignity, self-respect, or emotional protection, and she knew that God is deeply pleased when a soul allows itself to remain little, not because it is weak, but because it trusts Him to be its worth. She wrote, "To remain little is to recognize one's nothingness and to expect everything from God. This is not self-contempt, it is freedom. Imagine a moment from daily life. You are overlooked. Your effort goes unnoticed. Someone takes credit for what you did. A comment diminishes your contribution. Instinctively, the heart wants to correct, explain, justify, or defend. This reaction is natural. Santa Teresinha felt it too. But in that interior space, a choice appears. You can lift yourself, or you can let God lift you. Choosing humility does not mean pretending the pain does not exist. It means deciding not to build your identity on recognition. It means offering the moment to God and trusting that He sees what others do not. Santa Teresinha believed that God's eyes rest lovingly on the soul that accepts being hidden. In her convent life, she often went unnoticed. She was young, she was small, she had no position of influence, and she embraced this hiddenness as her path to holiness. She once wrote, "I choose everything." This included obscurity. Why does this small act please God so deeply? Because it imitates Jesus Himself, who lived most of His life hidden, unrecognized, and misunderstood. Because it purifies intention, love becomes free from the need for praise. Because it strengthens trust, the soul rests in God's gaze instead of human approval. Think about your own heart. How often do you long to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be validated? These desires are human, but Santa Teresinha teaches that when we offer them to God instead of feeding them, they become a quiet sacrifice that delights Him. Choosing humility in unnoticed moments creates a deep interior peace. The soul becomes lighter, less reactive, less anxious, more rooted. And God, who sees in secret, pours His tenderness into that hidden space. This small act does not change the outside world. It changes the heart. And a changed heart is what pleases God most. The fourth small act that pleases God more than we imagine is woven into the fabric of ordinary life, so ordinary that it is often dismissed as insignificant. Yet Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus believed this act had immense value in heaven. The fourth small act is this: doing ordinary duties with pure intention, not doing more, not doing better in the eyes of others, but doing what is already before you, with love. Santa Teresinha understood that God is not waiting for extraordinary opportunities. He is present in the present moment, and the way the soul lives that moment reveals the depth of its love. She wrote, "I do not have great things to do, but I do small things with great love." This sentence is the heartbeat of the little way. Imagine her daily routine: cleaning, sewing, preparing simple tasks, following schedules she did not choose. Nothing dramatic, nothing inspiring on the surface. And yet, Santa Teresinha transformed these moments by offering them intentionally, not for recognition, not for reward, but for God alone. Pure intention means this: I do this because I love God, even if no one notices. It is easy to love God in prayer. It is harder to love Him in repetition, and yet repetition is where most of life happens. Think about your own daily duties, the work you repeat, the responsibilities you carry, the tasks that feel invisible or routine. Santa Teresinha teaches that these are not obstacles to holiness. They are its material. What pleases God is not the task itself, but the love hidden within it. When intention is pure, even the smallest duty becomes prayer. Folding clothes becomes an offering. Listening patiently becomes worship. Completing a task faithfully becomes an act of trust. This small act matters because it unifies life. There is no separation between sacred and ordinary anymore. Everything becomes a space where love can grow. Why does this please God so deeply? Because it reflects constancy, because it reflects faithfulness, because it reflects love without conditions. Anyone can offer love when inspired, but to offer love when tired, distracted, or unmotivated, this is love refined by humility. Santa Teresinha believed that pure intention protects the soul from discouragement. When results are no longer the measure, peace returns. The soul becomes free, free from comparison, free from urgency, free from self-judgment, and God delights in that freedom. This act also purifies the heart. When duties are done for love, resentment fades, pressure lessens. The soul rests in knowing that God sees what no one else sees. The smallest duty, done with pure intention, becomes a quiet conversation with God. The fifth small act that pleases God more than we imagine is one that most people try to avoid. It takes place not in strength, not in success, but in weakness. Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus believed that this act draws God's heart closer than any display of spiritual confidence. The fifth small act is this: accepting your weakness with trust instead of discouragement, not excusing it, not glorifying it, but bringing it to God without fear. Santa Teresinha was profoundly aware of her limitations. She did not hide them. She did not dramatize them. She did not try to overcome them through sheer willpower. Instead, she offered them to God as the very place where His mercy could act. She wrote, "It is my weakness that gives me confidence." This sentence seems paradoxical, yet it reveals the core of her spirituality. Most souls believe they must be strong to please God. Santa Teresinha discovered the opposite. God is pleased when the soul stops pretending to be strong and begins to trust Him completely. Imagine a moment of failure. You lose patience. You fall into distraction. You repeat the same fault. You feel disappointed in yourself. The natural instinct is discouragement, a tightening of the heart, a withdrawal from God, a silent shame. But Santa Teresinha chose a different path. When she failed, she did not turn inward. She turned upward. She would say interiorly, "Jesus, I have fallen again, but I trust you even more." This is the small act. Accepting weakness with trust does not mean becoming passive. It means refusing to let weakness become a barrier between your heart and God. It means believing that God is more interested in your confidence than in your performance. Why does this please God so deeply? Because it honors His mercy, because it acknowledges His power, because it keeps the relationship alive. A soul that becomes discouraged closes in on itself. A soul that trusts opens again, even after falling. Santa Teresinha believed that discouragement is one of the enemy's favorite tools because it disguises itself as humility. But true humility does not push the soul away from God. It draws it closer. Think about your own spiritual life. How do you respond to your imperfections? With harshness, with silence, with distance? According to Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus, the most pleasing response is simplicity, acknowledging the weakness and trusting God more because of it. This act keeps the heart soft. It prevents bitterness. It protects peace. Instead of saying, "I failed, so I will hide," the soul says, "I failed, so I will trust." This is spiritual childhood in action. God delights in this attitude because it places everything in His hands, even failure, especially failure. The sixth small act that pleases God more than we imagine is found in something we use every day, often without reflection: our words and our silence. Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus understood that love is revealed not only by what we do, but by how we speak, and by when we choose not to speak. The sixth small act is this: restraining the tongue with love. Not silence born of fear, not silence used as punishment, but silence chosen to protect charity. Santa Teresinha lived in a community where words had weight. A single sentence could wound. A casual remark could create distance. A complaint could disturb peace. She became deeply attentive to her speech, not to appear virtuous, but to preserve love. She wrote, "I resolved never to say anything that was not kind." This resolution was not easy. It was daily, and it was costly. Imagine a moment from convent life. A sister speaks unfairly. A comment stings. The heart feels the impulse to reply, to explain, to correct, to defend. Words rise quickly, sharp, clever, justified. And right there, the small act appears, to pause, to soften. To choose silence or gentleness, this restraint is not weakness, it is strength guided by love. Santa Teresinha believed that many souls lose grace through unnecessary words, words spoken to release tension, words spoken to feel right, words spoken to protect pride. She discovered that God is deeply pleased when a soul chooses peace over expression. Why does this small act matter so much? Because words shape the atmosphere of the heart. Because silence preserves interior space for God. Because charity is protected when speech is purified. Think about how often words escape without love, a complaint spoken quickly, a judgment disguised as truth, a remark meant to relieve frustration. Santa Teresinha teaches that every unnecessary word is a lost opportunity for love, but every restrained word becomes an offering, unseen, unnoticed, and precious to God. This act also refines the soul. Silence slows reactions. It creates space between feeling and response. In that space, grace enters. She did not remain silent out of indifference. She remained silent out of charity, and when she did speak, her words were gentle, simple, and life-giving. Restraint of the tongue does not mean never speaking truth. It means speaking truth without harming love. It means letting charity decide whether a word should be spoken. God delights in this act because it mirrors his patience. God could speak constantly, correcting, exposing, confronting, yet he often chooses silence, not because he is absent, but because he is tender. When you restrain your words for love, you participate in that tenderness. This small act keeps peace alive. It protects relationships. It purifies intention. The seventh small act that pleases God more than we imagine is the one that quietly gathers all the others into a single movement of love. Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus considered this act the very soul of her little way, simple, constant, and profoundly childlike. The seventh small act is this: placing complete trust in God's love, especially when nothing is felt. Not trust born from emotion, not trust supported by visible consolation, but trust chosen in dryness, uncertainty, and silence. Santa Teresinha knew long seasons where God felt distant. Prayer became difficult. Feelings faded. Consolations disappeared. And yet this is where her spirituality became most pure. She did not try to manufacture emotion. She did not seek signs. She did not retreat. She trusted. She wrote, "I feel nothing, yet I choose to love." This is the summit of the little way. Trust, for Santa Teresinha, was not confidence in herself. It was abandonment into God's heart. She believed that God is most pleased when the soul chooses to believe in his love without proof, without reassurance, without reward. Imagine a child walking in the dark, holding the hand of a parent. The child cannot see where they are going. The path is unknown, but the hand is held. And that is enough. This is the trust Santa Teresinha lived. She believed that God delights in the soul that says, even in dryness, "Jesus, I do not feel you, but I trust you. Jesus, I do not understand, but I trust you. Jesus, I'm afraid, but I trust you." This small act pleases God deeply because it honors his heart. It tells him that his love is enough, even without evidence, even without consolation. Most souls trust God when prayer feels alive. Few trust him when prayer feels empty. And yet, Santa Teresinha teaches that this hidden trust is the purest form of love. Why does this act matter so much? Because it keeps the relationship alive when feelings fade. Because it purifies love from self-interest. Because it allows God to act freely. Trust does not ask to feel holy. It chooses to remain faithful. This act transforms suffering into offering, silence into intimacy, darkness into surrender. When you trust God without feeling him, you tell him, "I love you for who you are, not for what you give." And this love delights him more than we can imagine. Now that we have walked through the 7 small acts that please God more than we think, Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus invites us to see something even deeper. These acts are not separate techniques, nor spiritual achievements. They are one single attitude of the heart, the attitude of a child who loves simply and trusts completely. Acceptance without bitterness, kindness instead of withdrawal, humility in hidden moments, pure intention in ordinary duties, trust in weakness, restraint of the tongue, trust without feeling. Together, they form the little way. Santa Teresinha never believed holiness was complicated. She believed it was accessible. She believed it was hidden in plain sight, in kitchens, corridors, routines, misunderstandings, fatigue, silence, and unnoticed love. She taught that God does not wait for us at the end of heroic paths, but in the middle of ordinary days. She wrote, "I will seek out a means of going to heaven by a little way, very short and very straight." This way was not about becoming impressive, it was about becoming small. The beauty of these 7 small acts is that they are available to everyone. You do not need special knowledge. You do not need extraordinary strength. You do not need recognition. You only need a heart willing to love in the present moment. God is not counting your achievements. He is receiving your intentions. When you accept a small inconvenience with love, God sees it. When you choose kindness instead of withdrawal, God delights. When you remain humble in being unnoticed, God draws near. When you do ordinary duties with pure intention, God smiles. When you trust Him in weakness, God pours mercy. When you restrain your words for love, God protects peace. When you trust without feeling, God rests in your faith. None of these acts make noise. None of them attract attention. And yet, they transform the soul quietly, deeply, completely. Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus believed that heaven is filled with souls who became holy without anyone noticing. Souls who loved quietly. Souls who chose smallness. Souls who trusted God more than themselves. And she believed with certainty that this path is open to you. Holiness is not far away. It is not beyond your reach. It is not reserved for others. It is hidden in your next small choice. The next time you feel unnoticed, tired, weak, or ordinary, remember her words and smile gently. God is closer than you think. He is watching with tenderness. And He is pleased, not by what is great in the world's eyes, but by what is done with love in secret. This is the invitation of Santa Teresinha do Menino Jesus, to become little, to love greatly and to trust completely, and in this simplicity, to please God more than you ever imagined.